The title of this chapter is Applying, Replacing, and Removing Color. I'd like to start out by working with replacing color. So what we'll do is here in Bridge, we'll double-click on the Chapter 6 folder, Applying, Replacing, and Removing Color, and then double-click where it says Replace Color with Hue and Saturation. I'm going to open up my headshot here, double-click this TIFF image. Here we have a photo of me. And what I would like to do is make a selection using, of course, the most awesome quick selection tool. I'm going to select my shirt, and then I'm going to change its color. I'm going to use two different methods to do that. And I'm going to show you the differences and similarities between the two. So the first thing I'll do is with the quick selection tool now accessed, I'm going to increase the brush size by pressing the right bracket key and just click and drag real quickly across my shirt. And I think I'm going to Command Spacebar and then Marquee over in this corner. And then reduce the size of the brush by pressing the left bracket key, hold down the Option key or the Alt key in Windows in order to remove that little small area there. I'm going to hold down the space bar and scroll over a little bit because I saw another area over here. Decrease the size of the brush by pressing the left bracket key several times, holding down Option or Alt again, and just get rid of that little area just to fix up the couple of minor mistakes that the quick selection tool tripped up on. Okay, so now that we have our selection, what I'd like to do, of course, always, refine the edge. Okay, I like to preview it on white, just like I showed you in the Making Good Selections chapter, where we covered dealing with the quick selection tool and refining your selection edge. And I think in this particular instance, I think I do want to go with close to these settings. Just increase the contrast a little bit. I'm going to zoom in some by pressing Command plus. And zero this out and just see what the actual selection looks like. Bring the contrast down just to zero everything out and take a look at what we have. I think I am going to contract a little bit and add contrast, just a hair. Click OK. Let's see what that looks like. Looks like it's writing pretty close to right along the edge where I want it to. It should be a pretty nice sharp edge, and that will make a slight difference when we apply, in our next step, a hue and saturation adjustment layer. So I'm going to click on the Layers Palette icon, which is currently docked on the right side of my screen. When I click the icon, the Layers Palette flies out. We can now, from the Adjustment Layer menu, click on the Adjustment Layer icon and choose Hue Saturation. When we do, the selection, which we currently had, is applied to the layer mask, which appears automatically anytime you apply an adjustment layer. Okay, so we now have a mask. White reveals, black conceals. That means that any white area here in the mask is going to be affected by the hue and saturation adjustment. And if I move the hue slider around, I can change the color of my shirt, as you can see. Let's zoom out a little bit. You can see what's happening. Changing the color of my shirt to more of a maroon color. Okay, you can also play around with the saturation. If you think it's a little too bright, you can drag it to the left. It starts to get more in a sort of a grayish, dark brownish territory if you do that. I don't mind it really as a bright purple or maroon. I think I like the blue better, but for the sake of demonstration, we'll go with this maroon color. Okay, I'm going to click OK to apply this adjustment. Now that was pretty painless. We were able to replace this color, and since we used an adjustment layer, no pixels were harmed. This is all supposed. If we turn off the visibility for this layer, we still have our blue shirt. But this is what happens with our mask and our adjustment layer if we should apply this to change its color. Now, if we wanted to finalize this image, we could, of course, flatten it, and then we would be forever stuck with a maroon shirt, and that would change our pixels. But for now, we're sort of toying with the idea of what colors we want to work with. And that's the beauty of working with adjustment layers. It's not a permanent commitment. It's supposed, which is nice. And it doesn't really add a lot to your file size either to work with adjustment layers, and it's non-destructive. It's a great way to work. You really need to start thinking in this sort of designer frame of mind where we're trying out ideas, and the layers palette is great for that. Adjustment layers are great for trying out ideas, and it's all done non-destructively. All right, now one thing I want to point out about this particular technique, if I zoom in again by holding down Command Spacebar and marqueeing, you'll notice there's something called chromatic aberration that occurred when this photograph was taken. So you see this little sort of green halo that's following along this edge here? That tends to happen sometimes. In certain instances, it depends on your camera and the lighting. You might see a little bit of a glow along an edge. And unfortunately, when you use hue and saturation sometimes, with a selection like the one we just did, like the one we just created, the hue and saturation adjustment layer will tend to enhance this aberration. In those instances when this is a problem, you may want to try a different method for doing this, and I'd like to show you that now. The first trick I'd like to show you is we can reload the selection that we made with the quick selection tool by command clicking or control clicking in Windows on the layer mask icon in the layers palette. Just by clicking on that, we now have that selection reinstated. I'm zooming out some by pressing command minus. So you can see our marching ants again. So we have our selection all over again, and all we had to do was command click on this icon or control click in Windows. All right, so with that selection now back in place, I'm going to hold down the Option key or the Alt key. And first I'm going to turn off the visibility here, then hold down the Option key or the Alt key, click on the adjustment layer icon, and this time with that key held down, choose Solid Color. By holding down the Option key or the Alt key, it allows us to create this adjustment layer and also access this dialog box at the same time. The reason I wanted to do that is because I want to apply a blend mode to this solid color fill layer as I'm creating it and not afterwards. Okay, because otherwise it will cover up my entire image. I don't want that to happen because I'm going to choose the hue blend mode. That's going to make a huge difference. When we click OK, that's going to bring up the color picker so we can choose the color that we want to apply. I'm going to choose a reddish color to get that similar sort of maroon. A dark red, we'll click OK, and because this bright red is being applied to the hue blend mode, it's interacting with the blue color underneath, and that's how we're getting our maroon. Click OK. And so now if we zoom in again, where our chromatic aberration was, you can notice it's a lot less noticeable. And that is because we're using a solid color fill adjustment layer with the same selection applied to our layer mask, but we're using the hue blend mode. Okay, and that makes a difference. Hue and saturation, sometimes you get this sort of enhanced aberration, which we don't want. Solid color fill layer, not as prominent, which is a good thing. And we get pretty much the same results. So a couple of different ways that you can replace color on a selected item within an image in Photoshop CS3. In the next movie, I'd like to show you how we can take a grayscale image and apply some color to it.